The assignment for this project was to develop a predictive model using data for Calgary and a comparable city to determine the probability that a location will be inundated with floodwater. This process is a top-down model that is validated using logistic regression to evaluate different variables for significance. This video outlines the creation of rasters representing different features, including those related to water, topography, and land cover, and the regression that we performed, which found our model to be unsuccessful. In June 2013, the Canadian province of Alberta experienced severe flooding after a period of heavy rainfall. Calgary was particularly hard hit. Damages from the flooding totaled more than 250 million Canadian dollars in Calgary, out of a total of 6 billion within the province as a whole. In selecting a comparable city for this analysis, we considered factors like topographic features and climate zones. At this stage, we hadn't collected any shapefiles, so we looked at basic information that was readily available online. This led us to consider several cities in the Midwestern United States before deciding on Edmonton, a city 280 kilometers to the north of Calgary and also in Alberta. The two cities are similar in size, particularly of urban areas, and they experience similar climate conditions. Rivers run through both cities, an important consideration for our model, which was created by evaluating several different factors. Over the next few minutes, I will walk through some of this process using data from Edmonton as an example. We used a cell size of 25 meters, which corresponds approximately to half of the short end of a city block in the downtown areas of both cities. While we might have distinguished between cells with water features and those without, we instead considered proximity to water as a feature of interest. Using contour lines, we created a digital elevation model for each city, which we then used to create a slope raster, as we wanted to consider proximity to steep slopes rather than elevation itself. The Canadian government classifies slopes of 16 degrees or more as steep, and those of more than 30 degrees as extremely steep. We reclassified the slope raster to correspond to these categories and created shapefiles from which to calculate distance to these various levels of slope. Here, orange indicates steep slopes. We created a raster to show the distance to these slopes. Next, we used USGS Earth Explorer to find satellite imagery of Edmonton. About 250 points are selected for each type of land cover. These will be used later to determine the spectral profile of each. By combining the Landsat bands in GIS and then bringing the results into R, we manipulated the data in order to create a land use raster with three categories: water, developed, and undeveloped land. Here, developed land appears in orange. We were particularly interested in creating a raster that captures the distance of each cell from developed land, as impervious surfaces respond poorly to inundation. We included the following variables in our regression model: distance to urban areas, elevation, distance to rivers, distance to steep slopes, and land cover. We were limited to these variables given disparities in available data between Calgary and Edmonton. Testing these variables, our regression model indicates that they were not significant, meaning that our model is insufficient in predicting flood inundation. The shape of our ROC curve confirms this. Because of the major problems with this model, it does not make sense to move forward beyond this step. Going forward, we will need to create additional variables to test, and then to create a new model from that.